70,000 inmates pass through the doors of the Hillsborough County Jail in Tampa, Florida every year. From murderers to armed robbers to drug traffickers.
Don't let my hand go.
With so many inmates, the danger never goes away.
She trapped my hand in between the door and the door frame. Nurse that intake! It crushed 3 of my fingers.
Time to lock down.
The officers have been the target of death threats and murder plots.
The intent was to kill the deputy with the razor blade. He just missed. And that deputy got lucky that day because he was able to go home.
Some inmates just like to push the limits.
I've been that guy who starts the problem and makes them call for backup.
What are you gonna do? Put me in the hole? I'm already in the hole.
Here, if you don't stay on top of things, you're going to get hurt.
You never let your guard down, ever. You get it from 0 to 100 quick.
At the Hillsborough County Jail, the officers can't ever forget that their lives are on the line.
Stop pulling away from me.
Over 1,300 inmates are brought into Hillsborough County Jail every week.
Place your hands on the counter, back your feet up, spread your feet apart.
Central booking. The first point of contact in the often violent face-off between deputies and inmates.
You homicidal?
Many are angry and out of control, drunk or high, and ready to fight. There were over 24 attacks on officers at Hillsborough last year.
Come sit over here. Sir, sir, you need to sit over here. Listen to my instructions.
Nobody knows that better than Sergeant Onan, a 17-year veteran.
Everybody's coming in off the street intoxicated and or with drugs or weapons. They do not want to be here. They're aggravated and they want to retaliate. I would be lying if I said that I've never been scared. I have been, but I think that I try not to ever let them see that.
Sergeant Onan is committed to public service, despite the risks. She has been assaulted repeatedly on job.
I have had fracture on my nose. I was slammed headfirst into a steel vestibule door. He lost his pants. A corneal abrasion from getting punched in the face. Bruises head to toe, knee injury, ankle injury. Yeah, I got it. This way, sit down.
Tonight, an inmate arrested in an assault decides to act out.
Siéntate ahí, tranquilo, por favor. Por favor, siéntate ahí, tranquilo. We go into the holding cell.
He is placed in a holding cell until he cools off.
Kneel down.
The inmate must be checked closely for contraband, for drugs and weapons.
Last week, one of my intake deputies found a taser disguised as a cell phone, and that could have caused some damage. Put your hand on your head. Do not move it from your head until we exit the cell. Keep your hand on your head. Don't move. Stay on the ground until we exit the cell. Do not move from the ground.
Onan carries only one weapon.
I am armed with taser. I've used it only once.
Yeah, you can move.
Sergeant Onan knows all too well what happens when an inmate becomes violent. One night, she came very close to losing her fingers.
It was a combative female, very small girl, about 100 pounds. And as I opened the holding cell door, 2 of my deputies were holding on to her, and she was restrained. And when I grabbed it, that's at the same exact moment when she kicked it, and it trapped my hand in between the door and the door frame, and it crushed 3 of my fingers. I was wearing Kevlar gloves, so when I keyed the door, I had my gloves on, so my fingers were saved, but I've had several surgeries on my hand, so she got a 5-year sentence in prison for that. You know, I still don't have full range of movement, and every morning when I wake up, I remember Melissa.
22-year-old inmate Chris Trott has a reputation as a difficult inmate ever since he was a juvenile in this jail.
It started as an authority thing. I kind of didn't like a lot of deputies. I used to be that person who didn't care. It was just like, I'm gonna do whatever I want and they're not gonna do anything to me. What can they possibly do? Send me to lockdown and I'll get out in 30 days. I've been that guy who starts the problem and makes them call for backup.
Trott is at Hillsboro for violating probation on an armed grand theft auto conviction. He faces anywhere from several years to life behind bars, depending on the judge.
Now I'm in here fighting for my life and I realize that I should have stopped a long time ago.
Trott knows this jail well. He's been in and out of it since he was only a teenager.
My first arrest was for grand theft motor vehicle when I was 14 years old. I'm now 22 years old, so I've been doing this for 8 years now, altogether.
Chris Trott seems personable starting off, but he tries to manipulate the system to get anything possible.
It must be my face. I got an award-winning face.
According to Deputy Johnson, Trott has long had trouble with contraband, from illegal food to drugs.
If you look at what he actually does, what he actually has in possession, it's not that big of a deal, but he manipulates the system and causes more problems than most other inmates do.
Hello?
Hey, Mama.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
He says for the first time he's trying to walk the straight and narrow for his father, mother, and sister, as much as himself.
I'm tired of letting them down. I keep letting them down, and eventually they're gonna give up on me, and I don't want them to give up.
He also wants to stay out of lockdown, what he calls the box.
I'm getting tired of going to the box. I've only been to the box one time since I've been here right now, but in the past I did 6 months in the box, 30 days in the box, 45 days in the box, 60 days in the box, and the box gets old quick. Every day I lay in my room and I think about it, and I'm like, it's time to stop. I mean, you gotta stop sometime. It's time to grow up.
Trott will be seen as a problem until he can prove that he's turned himself around. Unfortunately, he still likes to break the rules. Hillsboro is a sprawling operation with 2 separate facilities down the road from each other and over 4,000 inmates.
Gentlemen, it's chow time.
Many of the pods here contain up to 72 inmates and usually only one officer who sits at a desk inside the unit, unprotected by bars or doors. It's called direct supervision, according to Intel Officer Master Deputy Gray.
In direct supervision, we are able to view everything in that pod, be it the doors, the housing, the whole 9 yards.
And down the line up, single file, one behind the other.
The philosophy behind it is we have our fingers on the pulse of that pod. We know everything that's going on.
What? 70? Where'd you get that? Is that your lottery numbers or what?
And while it works well most of the time, it also makes the deputy more vulnerable to assault.
Ladies, close cell 2 over, please, so I can see the corner over there.
Deputy Garcia, a 5-year veteran, is working today in the women's direct supervision pod, in charge of 62 inmates out of their cells for most of the day.
It's all about the control and the safety of everybody involved, and as long as you maintain that, you'll be fine. It's a yes, ma'am, and I suggest you come downstairs right now. When you are done with your shower, then you go straight to that cell and you make that bed the way you know you're supposed to.
According to Garcia, it's all about respect on both sides.
Here's all. Do we need a trip to the holding cell, ma'am? It's a place you haven't been in a while? Okay. That goes right along with having to create a relationship with these inmates in this pod. You have to build a level of respect with them so that you can gain the respect from them.
It doesn't always work. Right now, Garcia needs to deal with a disruptive young inmate who has been placed in a holding cell.
She came out of 1 Alpha this afternoon, very disruptive, would not go to her cell when she was ordered to. She did not want to be in the cell with the inmate that was housing with her. We can't just submit to the idea that she just wants her own cell or that she gets to pick the inmate that she wants to bunk with. That's not an option.
I'm not going in the cell with this lady, man. I can't stand her. Why it has to be like so difficult, I don't know.
You're making it difficult.
I can't stand her.
You're making it
She
difficult.
snores and she sings.
You don't get to pick your roommates. This is jail. It doesn't work that way. You're gonna sleep where you're told to sleep.
I'm not sleeping.
You don't get to pick your place. You don't get to pick your bed. You don't get to pick your roommates.
I'm not sleeping in there with her.
So we go through the measures that we have to take to see if she at this point will listen to what the deputy's orders are.
Don't be foolish now.
I'm not going in there.
Get up. Get up.
Get up.
Come on, get up. Get up. Get you up. Now we take a look right here. Here he comes again.
Got testimony?
Why are you being foolish?
I would not necessarily say that she was giving us a problem where we had to use any type of force. Handcuffing her was enough.
You're making this way harder than it has to be.
Because I don't want to go in there? Is it that serious?
It is that serious
yes.
when there's nowhere else to put you, so you want to continue to make this complicated.
That's all it is, but I don't want to be in there with her.
You don't get to decide that. You don't get to pick.
The inmate will now be put in the hole, solitary confinement, and lose her privileges.
Everything will be taken from her. No phone calls, only outside rec for an hour a day. No canteen, at least for 2 weeks. Will give her a really good idea of that maybe not doing what the deputy says isn't the way to go.
Deputies even faced the threat of lethal violence from outside. Just a few weeks earlier, Deputy Garcia was in charge of a male lockdown pod, which contained an accused double cop killer named Dante Morris.
We are currently housing Dante Morris, a very high-profile inmate.
Dante Morris is charged with gunning down 2 police officers who stopped him for a routine traffic violation. A few weeks after Morris's arrest, Garcia received an outside call at the jail from what appeared to be an insurance company. It wasn't.
About 12:50 Thursday afternoon, I received a threatening phone call that came through the jail. They stated that it was a business call. I repeatedly asked who I was speaking with.
The caller said he was a friend of Dante Morris.
He stated I would know exactly who he was when he killed me.
The jail went on high alert, and Garcia was carefully monitored by undercover officers outside.
We at that time determined that round-the-clock surveillance and security of my home, me and my family, was necessary.
There have been no additional incidents so far.
If you thought about it for too long, it could probably get to you. It doesn't, for me. I get more angry at the threat than I do fearful. I feel like I have a lot of support working for the sheriff's office.
Garcia refuses to let the threat stop her, but threats can quickly turn to violence.